Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's June 27th. Today is the very first National Onion Day, and it was founded by the National Onion Association, which represents almost 500 onion growers from across the United States. The association celebrated its 100th anniversary in 2013. Onions are a member of the bulb family. There are 27 different types of onions. And there's an old saying that says, the thicker the onion skin, the colder the winter will be. Here's today's brevities. It was on this day in 1787 that the naturalist Thomas Say was born. Say was born to a Quaker family and was a relative of the Bartrams. He grew up making frequent visits to their botanic garden on the banks of the Schuylkill River. Say was one of the first naturalists in the United States to advocate for the naming and describing of native flora and fauna. Before Say's time, plant and animal specimens were sent to Europe for identification. The long sea voyage would take a toll on specimens, and there were often errors. Say died from typhoid fever on the 10th of October in 1834 at the age of 47. His long obituary ended with these words: "On the 8th, the hopes of his friends were flattered by a deceitful calm. On the day following, these hopes were chilled. He appeared sinking under debility, when on the 10th, death came over him like a summer cloud. Intellect triumphed to the last hour. He left his wife directions as to his library and cabinet of natural history." And it was on this day in 1861 that the Courier and Argus out of Dundee, Scotland, reported the death of a botanical guide, William Williams. The newspaper account said that while his party rode slowly forward on ponies, he indulged in his favorite science, collecting plants. When they arrived at the summit, he left them again in order to gather some ferns. The party waited for him 90 minutes and then finally descended. Scouts were sent out, and his body was found lying 300 yards beneath the precipice from where he had fallen. Before he died, Williams had begun to realize that he was living a sort of contradiction. By locating rare plants for collectors, he was contributing to their extinction. Today, Williams' tombstone reads, "William Williams, upwards of 25 years, botanical guide at the Royal Victoria Hotel, who was killed by a fall while pursuing his favorite vocation." And it was on this day in 1889 that William Guilfoyle married Alice Darling. Guilfoyle was the director of the Royal Botanic Gardens, Victoria. When he married Alice, he decided to take his first holiday from the gardens in 17 years. They took a 9-month grand tour of British and European gardens and forests. It was really quite the experience, and it's documented wonderfully in this book called Mr. Guilfoyle's Honeymoon. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, and just so you know, you can only get it on Kindle. And it's the anniversary of the death of Elizabeth Cabot Agassiz. She was an American naturalist and educator and the first president of Radcliffe College in Cambridge, Massachusetts. In 1856, she married the Swiss naturalist Louis Agassiz and became an intimate part of his life and work. When they were first married, she started a girls' school in their home to bring in some extra income. When Louis died, Elizabeth was 51 years old. His death spurred her to establish Radcliffe College. In Unearthed Words, here's a poem from Rudyard Kipling, and it was written for gardeners. It's called The Glory of the Garden. Here's an excerpt. For where the thick laurels grow along the thin red wall, you will find the tool and potting sheds, which are the heart of all. The cold frames and the hothouses, the dung pits and the tanks, the rollers, carts, and drain pipes with the barrows and the planks. And some can pot begonias, and some can bud a rose, and some are hardly fit to trust with anything that grows. But they can roll and trim the lawns, and sift the sand and loam, for the glory of the garden occupieth all who come. Today's book recommendation is a favorite of mine. It's Practical Botany for Gardeners by Geoff Hodge. This book explains over 3,000 botanical terms. I think one of the reasons this book is so helpful is that it's so beautifully put together. The Denver Post said it's a gentle guide to the green world, organized precisely how a non-botanist would need it done. This book is heavily illustrated, and it's one of my favorite books to give to new and experienced gardeners. For today's garden chore, it's time to make a map of your garden. You can do this yourself. You can do this with the help of Google Earth. You could even hire your own illustrator. This chore was actually inspired by an article I read in the Detroit Free Press on this day in 1958. A nurseryman was talking about how his customers could be most helpful, and in his mind, a garden map was the most helpful tool that he could use with his clients. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. I ran across a little article for today's show in the Marion Star out of Marion, Ohio, on this day in 1894. The article was titled Blooming Beauties, and it contained these charming brevities. Sweet alyssum is the most satisfactory of all the hardy annuals. It flowers early and late and all the time. And then it offered this little tip. A simple way to remember the difference between the Virginia creeper and the poison ivy is this. If the vine has 5 leaves corresponding with the 5 fingers of your hand, you may handle it. If it only has 3 leaves, you may not. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up, and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.